Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale, and we have a special broadcast this evening. Joining me on the discussion and the broadcast is, of course, a very familiar face on StratNews Global, Jayadeva Ranade, a former RNAW officer, China specialist, and one of the most informed China watchers that India has. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, who had commanded the 14 Corps in Leh not very long ago. In fact, in 2013-14, when the last crisis took place, he was the Corps commander there. He will just join us in a moment. But before I commence the discussions and also analyze the situation, the broadcast, I must confess here, is about the massive Chinese buildup in Aksai Chin and the details of that buildup, which has forced India to also match deployments on Indian side of the line of actual control in Ladakh and elsewhere along the Himalayan frontier. So, what exactly happened as far as the buildup is concerned? Now, it began very gradually. If you go back about 2-3 months and look at how the Chinese had started building up, it on May 4th and 5th, the Indian surveillance and Indian watchers actually discerned many more Chinese troops coming forward towards the line of actual control in Aksai Chin, which then was noticed. But the extent of the massive buildup was really known only later. Now, this preparation, we are told, began actually in January when the exercises were taking place in the Xinjiang military subdivision and the Tibet subdivision. If you look at the map in front of you and the red stars that are shown, are the areas where the Chinese have now deployed various forces. Their 4 Mech division, which is now at Hotan, has been moved forward towards the LAC. The 6 Mech division has also been brought in there, elements of those 2 divisions. And then behind them, at the Tianshu exercise area, as you see in yellow, was the area where the exercises had been done by the Chinese land forces in January and February. And those forces apparently stayed back and then came forward towards their side of the Galwan Valley and at the hot spring, opposite what India calls hot spring. And therefore, this reference point here in red, which is a Chinese base opposite India's hot spring area. And that, of course, Kongakla is one of the major Chinese bases along that red line that you see, is where the Chinese have amassed huge numbers in about 8 to 10,000 people with tanks and otherwise. Now, Aksai Chin was the area that Tianshu Hui, which is a town in that area, which is also a major base. 2 bases are there, in fact, where the Chinese have their military base. And they, of course, also had some of the forces coming in from the Karakoram Pass side, where you can see those 2 red stars near the Chipchap River. They had also done exercises there. There were 3 different exercises, which then got amalgamated and then turned into a massive deployment. Now, if you look at the map as we were showing, the Chinese have also been releasing propaganda videos, which many of you have seen. This is the map, as I was mentioning. The Aksai Chin area, of course, is done. And now look at this propaganda video about their exercises in the high altitude areas of Tibet and Xinjiang military subdivisions. And of course, they come under the Western Theatre Command. Now, these have been regularly released by the People's Daily and the PLA Daily. In fact, to tell the people both back home and across the world what they're trying to do. The T-15 light tank, then some of the artillery guns, as you can see here, are being shown, and how they travel across the high altitude areas. All these photographs and videos have been released. Of course, we know they bombard us, all of us, with this as a part of the psychological operations that they do. And some of the videos are also, therefore, released in a way. Now, as I said, the 6 Meg division, which is the main force in the area, came towards Galwan and Hot Spring on their side of the LAC and amassed there. And if you can see the Galwan River, and we have shown the PP14 area in red on west of the line of actual control, where that is the Indian Patrol Point 14. That is where the clash occurred exactly a week ago. As we are speaking, around this time, the tension was building up between the Indian and the Chinese soldiers at PP14, which resulted in, as we know, the sacrifice of 20 soldiers, including the officer. And of course, unspecified number of Chinese were killed in that action, which went on for about 5-6 hours until midnight on 15th of June. Now, that is where the main contention was in the Galwan Valley area. We have not gone to Pangangso, which is a different context and a different problem. But this is where in Aksai Chin, from that Aksai Chin road, as we are showing to the east of the map, and up to the Galwan River and the Shyok River, the LAC, that is where the Chinese have amassed their the forces there. Now, we also learned that they have moved about 100 different kinds of aircraft to Tibet. And you can see these airfields in Tibet. There is Hotan, there is Angari, there is Lhasa, there is Ingichi, then there is Chengdu, of course, is a little deep in the interior, and Kunming is in Yunnan province. But you can also see the matching airfields that India has from Arunachal Pradesh or from Assam, bordering Arunachal Pradesh in Chabua and Tezpur to the east, and coming right up to Leh in Ladakh. And there are a whole number of airfields that India can bring into play when the two air forces really come in. And India has a definite edge in the air dimension of the warfare if it happens, if the war happens. So really, but as I have been saying all along, India or Indians need not worry that China has gotten so many forces. As you can see, they have been moved. These videos have been released, but this is the Indian video. This is of exercise Him Vijay, which took place in Arunachal Pradesh for the first time in September, October last year. Now, this is where India's offensive arm, the 17th Mountain Strike Corps, actually used the time for exercise at high altitude area, and the concept of the IBG, the integrated battle groups that India is now trying to perfect. This is where the exercise took place in Arunachal Pradesh, which China claims to be South Tibet, and it was validated through different scenarios during those 2 months when the exercise took place in the area of Tawang and other places. Night firing, there was live firing, there is movement of troops by air from Panagarh in West Bengal in small groups. Of course, there was winter setting in, and you can see the former Army Chief General Bipin Rawat, going and inspecting the exercise. Now is, of course, the Chief of Defence Staff, and he is also addressing the troops at the conclusion of that exercise in October. These are never seen before videos of that exercise in September, October 2019, exercise Him Vijay, which actually had provoked the Chinese in a way that they almost cancelled one of the high-level meetings with India at that point in time. But this was needed for India to be done, that exercise. And of course, there was another exercise in Ladakh, and a high-altitude, two-dimensional exercise between the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. And this is the video of that exercise in Ladakh, where well-acclimatized troops have done what they need to do to perfect their war-fighting abilities and their tactics and strategy. And this is real combat. This is something that the Indian Army does time and time again, hones its skills in various terrains, and especially in high altitude areas where you need to be acclimatized. And as you can see, many aspects of that exercise are being shown here in this video, which was released by Northern Command in September, October last year, again, almost simultaneously with Eastern Command. So they are ready, the Indian forces, and as we know, reinforcements have come to Ladakh area from various places. Another division of the Indian Army, the Reserve Division meant for Ladakh, has also been deployed in Ladakh now. Then, of course, we know that area of Ladakh is a high altitude desert. If you can pull up the map of Ladakh for our viewers, the Shiok DBO road, which is said to be one of the main triggers for China to come and sort of try and prevent us or slow down our Indian side's infrastructure building. But more than that, I think, and our experts will tell us once we start the discussion, that is the Chinese doing this deployment in large numbers only to send a message to India, or is it also that they are trying to perfect or test their own readiness and own responses and the speed with which they can deploy? We'll discuss all that. And of course, you know that for various reasons, the drill on the LAC, the drills that they carry out, what is called the line of actual control drills or banner drills, have been working very well so far. As you can see, this is what the Indian and the Chinese troops do when they come face to face with each other. That you say that you are on Indian territory, please go back. The Chinese do the same thing, and it used to be quite peaceful until recently. But as we know, it has not remained peaceful. We've lost lives on both sides for the first time in 45 years after 1975. And therefore, the situation is tense. As we speak, the corps commanders are meeting at Chushul on the Chinese side of the meeting point. We don't know what the outcome is, but the agenda was, of course, to lower the tensions and, of course, carry out the two-step disengagement and de-escalation in the long run. All that being done, there's another unverified video which has come out about a fisticuff. And I think, going by what I know of the terrain, this is perhaps in Sikkim, most probably at Nakula, where the first clash of the fisticuffs took place. Or there is a area called Bunker in Sikkim, where actually this is an unverified, undated video, but it's instructive for two reasons. One, of course, the humor under tension. If you listen to it later, it's available on social media. Somewhere, an Indian soldier is telling his Chinese counterpart, "Golgappe khayega kya?" And at some point, at about 1 minute or so, the Jawan, the soldier, Indian soldier, is saying, "Saab ko haath mat lagana, saab ko haath mat lagana. Don't touch my officer." That is the kind of bondage, the bond between, not the bondage, the bond between the soldier and the officer is what makes the Indian Army effective and unique in a way. And therefore, it's something that the video is not verified. But that is all that kind of things that are happening across the LAC and more particularly in Ladakh. But having said all this, I think it's important to get the context, get to understand what exactly has prompted the Chinese to come there. And therefore, I want to bring in my guest now. First, Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, as I said, a China specialist, a very avid watcher. And Mr. Ranade, to your credit, you've been talking and writing about it since at least March, if not January, about how the Chinese have been carrying out exercises in high altitude areas, not just the ground forces, but also the air forces. Can you tell us how do you discern the entire exercise or the deployment, the massive deployment along the LAC on the Chinese side, and why do you think they have done that?
Thank you, Nitin, and thank you for inviting me on your show. There are a couple of points that you made in your opening remarks relevant to the question you have just posed. The first is whether this exercise was conducted by the Chinese leadership in order to test the preparedness and responses of the PLA, or the People's Liberation Army, that is the Chinese ground force. The second was whether it is to send us a signal. So let me say that if the idea was to test the responses and the speed and efficiency of the People's Liberation Army, then there are many things that remain unexplained. Firstly, if there was such an exercise, and the moment we got concerned, Beijing should have told us that this is just an exercise, not to worry, and we are pulling back. and they should have pulled back. That is what I'm sure General Sharma would confirm. That is what our officers would do and our army would do in case of such a situation. But that did not happen. Secondly, uh, the reason I'm mentioning this is Xi Jinping, who is today the chairman of everything, as they call it, in China. He has hands-on control over the People's Liberation Army. And he has served, by the way, he has been a serving officer in the PLA also for a while. But more importantly, he was chief of staff to the Chinese defense minister at a time when China attacked Vietnam. So, and that was done by Deng Xiaoping. He ordered that attack to teach Vietnam a lesson, but also to show the Chinese military commanders how inefficient and backward they were. And the end result of the Sino-Vietnam War, in fact, proved his point. And then the reform started. But he saw that process. So, considering that he has started the reform and reorganization of the Chinese armed forces to a degree that has never happened before, I think he would certainly be keen on testing whether his reforms have been properly implemented, whether they were properly thought out, and whether the PLA is today an army of the future, which is what you wanted it to become. The second point which you made was it a signal to us? I think again, if it is to be a signal to us, it would be a very expensive signal. I mean, it's much easier to pick up the phone and tell their counterpart that we don't like ABC or whatever it is, either through diplomatic channels or through military channels. But this way, mobilizing so many troops, massing them all along the line of action, pulling on the reserves, I mean, bringing up the reserves, including heavy artillery, deploying the helicopters and getting fighter aircraft is certainly much more than just a signal. I might also mention you did refer to the fact that I have been talking about these exercises. In fact, for a year now, I have been monitoring the Chinese exercises, and I find that there are the appreciably increased number of ground and air exercises that are taking place in the Tibetan plateau. And it's just not that. It's when they have these exercises, they make it a point of often mentioning that this is to counter India or this is to take care of Indian forces. So there is a kind of a preparedness that has been going on for a long time, particularly after Doklam.
Right.
So I don't think it was just signaling.
Right. General Sharma, let me bring you in here, and you have commanded the corps even when the last, the issue took place or the problem occurred at Depsan, and you handled it at that point in time. Now, what is your sense? Why have they amassed one? And people, of course, our viewers want to know how well matched is India as far as the ground forces and in the preparation and the deployment is concerned. Your views, please.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you for inviting me. It's a interesting topic to discuss, especially now when all this heat is on. The fact is that we have, over the period of time, war gamed Chinese the quantum of troops that he can bring across bear against us. And we are also aware of the exercises that he does annually and the places he does the exercises, the typology of exercises. In our assessment over a period of time, we have seen photographs of him capturing a high altitude pass, which actually gives an impression the only place where he can capture a high altitude pass is against India. He doesn't have such kind of borders anywhere else. Or he is
Right.
dragging his guns up the slopes of snow-clad mountains, so which also gives an impression that he has some intent. And as you are aware, 10 years ago, the RAW had informed us that there is a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer model of Saichen areas existing in the Tibet region, which actually implies that he has interest in these areas. So we have been wargaming and we have been building ourselves. Now, in the course of last some time, and normally his exercises are not, as you pointed out, in these areas where he is now. His exercises are generally north of Kunlun Mountains, in the areas of Hotan. But this time, if he's brought his forces down to G219 opposite us, it implies that he is doing something more than he's been doing normally. And when you
Right.
add all the issues happening together and you accumulate it together, it obviously, I would go by this thing that it's a kind of test bed being done. This is 2020. He is coming
Right.
to first of his thresholds, first of his milestones. And also he is reaching a milestone where he's testing his combined arms teams. He modeled it on United States. So the combined arms brigades and all units that he's created, which he did not have earlier. So he has actually wanting to test those things. The new light tank that we saw in last year's parade, he's brought it out here. So the light tank is about 35 tons. So it is only meant against us. And he has those towed howitzers. All this was shown first time in 2019. And as we gather the impressions, he has brought these equipment across to bear with us. Is he sufficiently forced to undertake serious operations against us, say in Excision everywhere? There I would have a little doubt. I would say that I would think that he is not sufficiently forced as we war game. And the quantum of force that he can bring to bear against us from the Western theater itself, not banking elsewhere. He is trying some forces. He's got a mechanized division. They say he's got a motorized division also close by. But is that quantum of force which he would feel sufficient to do a task? I think it is not so. And that is my impression of it. I think, if he has to move around the axis that he have, the axis that moves into an area, then he will be hamstrung to manage with these only two divisions. So he requires larger quantum of force. So my guess is, one is a message to us. It is a strong message that I can do this. We were not informed of his movement across the Kunlun. How did he bring these two divisions across the Kunlun, which have taken 4 or 5 days? We had no idea till the time we reached us. So he has the capacity to move them, and then he has the capacity to concentrate in areas, including the air forces. And then, we get wiser at a little later time. So he has given one message: I can do the concentration, and second, I can launch an offensive at his will. We take the message accordingly. Okay, fine, he can do this. But we know that when he leaves the 219 and he moves inwards with his forces, he has only select areas. He can't cross high mountains. He has to come through select areas. We know the select areas that he can come through. And if we say we are watching the select areas, then we know what he means business. Now, in the
True.
last point that you raised, are we ready? I think in mountain warfare and super high altitude warfare, in defensive operations, we have no peer in the world. The kind of experience we have, we have actually been blooded. You see the amount of artillery firing that goes across on the line of control in Pakistan, and we face it day in and day out and carry on with it, and without having casualties. So the on conventional operations in high altitude in defensive warfare, I think we have no peer. There may be other weaknesses which we need to address, but
Right.
often I say, okay, at what force level he's brought in, we are well geared to handle it.
Well, that's good to know. In any case, if I'm not mistaken, I think you require what, 1:12 ratio for any offensive operation to succeed in the mountains. Is that correct, General Sharma?
See, we did this in Kargil. Kargil was capture of high peaks and all, so we brought a ratio of 1:12. At places 1:9, at places 1:12, maybe more at places. But when you say he comes across in valleys and plateaus, which is say Oxygen area, when it doesn't require that kind of ratios. But we want to bring it across the Kailash range, when he requires larger ratios because he comes down through Kailash range into the valleys. So it is place to place that he will apply himself, and each place we are geared to handle it. As you are aware, Nitin, in the course of last 8 years, there has been a transformation in Eastern Ladakh, total
True.
transformation. Till
Complete.
2012 and 13, we had actually scant forces. Saichen, there used to be Paratry One company or ITVP and a company of ours. Now we have such good forces, and I will not name them, but with
Sure.
such quantum of forces that we know if he comes along Chip Chap or along KK or along, and we know what we can do. So actually, I will not put a force level to each area. Each area has to be handled separately.
No, that's very good to know. I think the viewers will be very assured with that. Mr. Ranade, on a larger issue, a lot of discussions go on in social media and then, of course, the Chinese social media also. This is in reference to the clash at Galwan, which is like a primitive clash, hand-to-hand combat, beating up each other with primitive weapons. And then, of course, so many people killed in action. Now, as more and more details emerge, and if this was a premeditated kind of an operation by the Chinese at Galwan to ambush our unsuspecting soldiers who went across to try and remove the tent or sort of ask them to go back, the PLA may be worried because the planned operation didn't go according to their plan. I mean, will there be a review? Is there a system in the PLA to review such kind of setbacks?
Yes, certainly. In fact, whatever they had done, to my mind, uh, it was a planned, predetermined operation. They had decided that as and when our people come, because it was by prior agreement, that they would not dismantle their tent and probably that they would beat up our guys and send them back. Because if you just look at the instruments that they use, they may be primitive, but they were prepared. So that is, I would say, it was premeditated. Secondly, they have a system where moment there is a operation, whether it is an exercise or whether it is a live operation. Of course, they haven't had one since 1979, but still, uh, if there is an operation, then the political commissar and the frontline commander or the main commander, they actually discuss the operation because they have discussed the plan itself when the planning was done. They have discussed the objective, they've selected it, and now they will discuss what happened, what went wrong, etc. With the political commissar filing his report independent. So there is a system of keeping an eye, shall I say, on the main commander, main frontline commander. Having said that, let me also add that here, while it was predetermined, while they were waiting, they probably did not expect our soldiers to retaliate in the manner that they did. They probably did not expect some of the soldiers who were at the back to rush up the way they did, though they were unarmed. And they certainly didn't expect to get the kind of, if I may say, beating that they did. And there are 2 pointers here. One is that they, of course, till today haven't come out of the figures. Though our official channels have said that they have information that an X number were killed. The Americans have come out with even a higher number. But the second pointer is that on China's social media, there have been a number of people asking, where are our soldiers? Why are they not coming back? Of course, there are others who are addressing it to their soldiers, saying, please come home. So,
Yes.
had an effect, and they can certainly see that here we've had, the bodies being brought back, the soldiers being flown, newspapers are talking about it, etc., etc., and soldiers being, cremated with full honors and all that. Out there, there's a deafening silence. I don't think
Right.
that is going down well with either the veterans in China who are already feeling that they're not being given the right kind of treatment, or with the public who will use this as another charge against the leadership and the Chinese Communist Party, saying that you have been telling us that you are building up a great army and a modern army, etc. So what happened?
Right. Sharma, on that point again, and before I come to you, I just want to take one question from one of our viewers, Rishikesh Kurekar. He has this question, and this is for both of you, but I'll ask General Sharma to first answer it and then come to Mr. Ranade and then come back to General Sharma. Will this mean LSE is delineated as a status quo, is what he is asking. General Sharma, what do you think?
See, LSC has been in discussion from 1981 onwards, and LSC has joint working group. It had expert groups. There were 15 times that they met. There were 22 times the SRs had met. There has been zilch progress on any demarcation or delineation of LSC. There have been no talks at all. So actually, he doesn't want to do it. The Chinese don't want to demarcate. It is a leverage that they retain on us. It's a geopolitical issue, and once you sort it out, the border gets sorted out. He doesn't want to do it. Even in the
Yeah.
central sector where there were lesser problems, he's not progressed as earlier. Whether it converts into LAC as status quo, no. There are actually, it is not a status quo. It is It is always, it is not in line of control as you have mentioned somewhere else. It is a difference. It is not eyeball to eyeball, except maybe in odd one or two places, Nathula, etc. So there are distances here. Uh, we have to now understand that he means business. There are areas where there is still issue of not the perceptional issues. Many of these areas, especially in eastern Ladakh, where there are problems occurring even today in between patrols and between clashes taking place. So we have to now manage it in a manner that it doesn't become the LOC, but we are able to dominate it. So our hackles are up. This changeover that happens on 15th of June, and in fact, in the course of 45 days, will change the entire posture of how we manage the line of actual control, especially in eastern Ladakh. And it becomes on the Indian Army to make sure that he doesn't do what he's done, say at Pegong. So in other areas like say Demchok, you know, all this can happen. So there'll be a posture check. It is not rules of engagement alone between patrols. It is rules for management of line of actual control that will change, and then rules for disengagement will change. So it is the
Sure.
gamut. We say the changeover will be total because of the trust deficit now.
So clearly, this is a landmark moment in the India-China relations, and especially on the line of actual control. Mr. Ranade, your views on whether the LAC will get delineated as a status quo as it exists?
No, I agree with what General Sharma said. Absolutely. I just add one little point that one of the reasons why they will not agree to an LAC or even a boundary, of course, is a very remote possibility, is because they keep shifting the goalposts. They keep adding new things. Like this time, they have now come out saying that Galwan is China exercises sovereignty over Galwan. They have made that statement twice after the 5th of February. Secondly, they have started claiming the whole of Ladakh. So if they're going to keep making these changes, then obviously they cannot agree to a LAC or a boundary. And I think that is their main thing. They have kept their options open. They are waiting till, as per their expectation, they really become a mighty power, rivaling, if not surpassing, the United States. And at that time, they'll sort us out. That is their thinking. I don't think it will happen.
But Jan Sharma, on the on the other issue that I was wanting to ask you that question about how the Chinese may have been surprised by the ferocity with which the Indian soldiers actually responded at Galwan exactly a week ago, at around this time, as we know now. I mean, you've commanded troops from company level to corps level and then beyond. I mean, just give us a sense what drives the Indian soldier to what he does. The way this reaction happened at Galwan.
Look, by nature of being, we believe in good faith. It is the way we behave. It's the way the nation behaves. It's the culture of even the culture of the armed forces is there is a good faith and behavior. If you say these weapons are primitive and medieval, I absolutely agree. But which army carries such kind of sophisticated medieval weapons? It looks as if it has been issued to them, as if like I get a weapon issued, a pistol issued. It's an issue item to people that this is a danda which has got a barbed wire on top. It was not being improvised on situation. These knuckle dusters are not provided to soldiers. Knuckle dusters are actually issue. So to say that they use primitive methods, but they were not primitive thought process. It was a well thought out thing because the items they brought along with them. They used it in Pegong, but they have not used it in Galwan till 15. Until 15th, we were meeting in Galwan regularly at various, including the major generals have gone and met in Galwan. So there
Right.
was no sign of it. So maybe initially we thought, yeah, we've been meeting these fellows, the CO and the brigadier here for so often. So we were probably ill prepared to say they will certainly show up that anger. But on the other side, these people were prepared. They had not accepted what was decided earlier that they will remove the tents or whatever. So they knew that we are not doing it, and when people come up to check up, they will use these weapons which were kept with them. So be it. Maybe the first onslaught, they were more successful. But look at the way people came. The people came from far and wide, from Punjab regiment, other than the 16th Bihar, which was there. The Sikhs, the burly Sikhs of medium regiment, they all rushed up from gun position. They said, okay, it is just a word to mouth. Okay, there is a thing being held there, and these people are being cuffed, and they're climbing up a single small track, not bothered about anything, and reach there. That's the ferociousness that come about brethren. We are brother at arms. People might say that you are armored corps or artillery, and we have all these things that people keep writing about. At a moment of time, there is no regiment or corps. It is all together, and they heard that things were not right, and our people were being beaten, and then they had it, and then they had it. The ferociousness shown by many of these people, which we have been hearing now from troops on ground, as also from the people who are in the hospitals and coming back, or those who are bringing the bodies home. And you say the anger, and somebody said, okay, we can't use weapons, but we can at least put a bayonet in front of the weapon and use it. So look at
Right.
the cultural change. He says, okay, I can't fire because somebody signed 2005 and 1996, but nobody said you can't put a bayonet in front. So I mean, this is culture of organization. It was not taught. The officers were hurt. The officers were taken away. But it was the people themselves. And some JSO said, in Punjabi, he said, "Anu chuk le aao." Matlab, just bring this fellow home.
We'll just
You know,
follow back. Exactly.
something like that. I
Yeah.
think hats off to the courage, raw courage of these people. And you imagine it. Tomorrow he can come with all weaponry, but he will remember every place that he has come to do fist fights, contact fights. Razangla. You go back to 62, Razangla, you see Magar Hill, Walong, Gurung Hill. Everybody goes back to Sela and Tawang. But you see the valor over 67. You see
Exactly.
capturing Haji Pass. You see the valor at Kargil. He sees the history of a valor on altitude. I think he will be very cautious to say that this fist cuff business and the contact war is not his being. He can't
No.
handle it.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I wanted to, because Mr. Ranade watches China so closely and has been there and lived there. This is some discussions that have been happening worldwide. That while China may have a very modernly equipped or modern weapons equipped army, it remains to be seen how hardy the soldier is. Is there any study done, like studies have been done about Indian Army or the US Army, about the quality of the soldier? Is something of that kind done with the PLA? You have any insights on that, of the raw human element in this soldiering?
Actually, the reports that one gets are patchy and sketchy. A few lines in some newspaper, a few lines in some other newspaper, Chinese newspapers, or in the recruitment process, how they have either reduced certain criteria or things like that. Like, for example, a year and a half ago, they began accepting officers where the eyesight qualifications were reduced. So things like this. But there is no, shall I say, there is no book which has been written or no document which has been prepared, at least in the public realm, which spells this out. Having said that, let me also mention a couple of points. One is, of course, that there are these things that we are seeing about, as I said, about eyesight, about the thrust areas for recruitment. The bulk of the PLA soldier of the ground forces still comes from the rural areas, from rural China, because the people in the more prosperous eastern seaboard, in the bigger cities, he doesn't want to go because he feels the salaries that he's going to earn are much higher. But
Right.
this year, I mean, this has been happening earlier, but from this year, the Chinese have started, they have increased the quotas for people from universities to join, in the expectation that they would be able to raise the scientific levels, etc. So this, people from universities who are coming in, how capable they will be is a bit of a question mark there. Secondly,
Right.
many of them are one child, single child, where a policy that Tang Xiaoping started in 1979. So one or two generations. Now you can imagine a parent sending his only child will be very anxious, and the child also would have grown up in a very pampered environment. So whether he'd be able to take the tough conditions or not is another question. The third is there are reports about the PLA soldiers being deployed in Tibet, and they're reluctant to go. I mean, it's been said in so many words, and they're reluctant to complete that term. They're trying to see how they can get out and come back, to their whatever the regimental establishment or something out of Tibet. But therefore, they're getting very high allowances, and almost every year we find the allowances being raised by about $1,000 or so. So that's a lot of money, and compared to the other troops. So these are all incentives. Now, General Sharma would be a better interpreter of all this data, but to my mind, it appears as if they are being, shall I say, lured or enticed to stay on and serve their term, which also raises the question that how enthusiastic are they as per training and as per fighting? As he said, our soldiers are gung ho, in this kind of thing. Do they have that same kind of philosophy? These are the things that come to my mind. But yes, there is no standard. I mean, there's no sort of compilation that I'm aware of, and I'm sure it can be done if we put a lot of effort and resources into it.
But good to know that. But let me come back to the actual situation right now. I mean, we've spoken about the deployment, spoken about how the Air Force, of course, we are told and we know that the Indian Air Force has an edge because of certain topographical reasons as well as the technological reasons. But let me come to something which one of our viewers has asked. And I'll first come to General Sharma. Do we have means to counter information warfare that is unleashed by China? And you've spoken about it at a number of places and written about it. I think they are employing it in full force, information warfare in the current scenario.
Yeah, I think, we should never underestimate our opponent. And even for that matter, we may have come out well in the course of Galwan, but we must not underestimate him. He has modernized his forces in a singular manner, and he's focused. His three warfares, where he says it's psychological and legal and informational, his focus is different. And I think somebody asked, the Saurabh who's asked the question is genuinely right. There are lacuna in our handling of information system. We could have made immense amount of mileage in the 40 days if we had handled the information domain as well as the Chinese have done. And I think we have lost out into this game because of various reasons. It's the way we function. It's the way the army function, the way the government functions, the way people function. Otherwise, you see Afghanistan, you see a small young girl who's dressed up as a captain or a major of the American army comes and says, okay, we hit Tora Bora and we did A, B, C, D. And, people believe it. In our case, we become myopic. We become inward looking, fixated. If you ask me, I think in an information age, the aggression required at here. And Americans nowadays, before they start an operation, they say, okay, what will happen if the operation goes wrong in the realm of information?
Right.
So they study the realm of information as much as they study the realm of carrying out a warfare. So, when they say we want to withdraw from Syria, they'll say what will be the media publicity that will go adversely against us and how we will handle it. But in our case, we think media, of course, you trained me once, Nitin, in NDC, trained me badly. That apart, the fact is that we think it is an aside, it is a appendage. We don't think that information is warfare like a bullet is or like a missile is. There is where we are losing out, and I absolutely agree. I think we need to wake up on the information age warfare.
That's right. Mr. Ranade, General Sharma has been very generous in saying that I trained him. I didn't. I was only doing a workshop in NDC where he happened to participate. And of course, I trolled him as he remembers. But that's something in the past. He's handled it so well and he exactly knows what it means. Like you heard him say about this information warfare. But you have also seen the Chinese army, the Chinese military changing. And I think the use of information warfare, as far as they are concerned, has been quite advanced compared to what they used to do. What should India do in this case? What is your view on that?
You see, firstly, there are a couple of points that we need to keep in mind. A country like China, or for that matter, any communist country, its focus is on domestic unrest. It is on controlling the society. So they, in any case, are using information warfare against their own people 24 hours a day. How to control the narrative, how to control their minds. And now with social media coming in, they have mastered that also, how to control the narrative that is flowing on social media. We have not done that. We are a democracy, we are open, and there are other factors, but this is one. The second is that paying attention to this aspect, they have been very conscious of the fact that whenever there is any problem in a neighboring country or with another country where they're involved, they have to project themselves as the wounded party. That is the standard way they operate, a counter-attack in self-defense, etc., etc. So they again bring a lot of, they put a lot of emphasis on information warfare on the adversary's population. And so you will find them being able to infiltrate the news channels, whether it is social media or otherwise, of the adversary. And they're able to do it in various ways, either win over people or plant pictures and videos, all kinds of things. So that is the second. The third, which I think is more dangerous and more in the realm of all of us here, is their cyber capability.
Right.
Whereas that is an aspect of information warfare that attracts our attention. Ones I mentioned earlier are equally deadly. But this information warfare, again, what they have done is and I say this advisedly, every high-tech company or IT company in China is, firstly, it is very closely linked with the security establishment. Secondly, the military, that is the PLA, ground forces, air force, navy, they have special cyber battalions. They are integrated almost, if I may say, in terms of usage with these companies, private companies, so-called. And whether they send their people to these companies for training, or the people from these companies come and train the companies, the platoons, the battalions dealing with cyber warfare in the army unit concerned. And therefore, they develop a certain capability, and then these personnel are dedicated to information warfare, which is offensive as well as defensive. Now, I'm in no position to comment on how good we are, how good they are. We'll know. But certainly, one of their principles of warfare, which they have said, is that in the first flush, what they will do is mount a massive, cyber offense to bring down the adversary's information networks, particularly command to formations and political leadership to the army. Secondary will be the population in order to spread discontent. So what I'm trying to say is that they give a lot of emphasis to this, and it is, as General Sharma correctly pointed out, it is one of the three warfares that they use.
True. In fact, as we come towards the end of the program, one last question to both of you, General Sharma, to you first. Your best or the worst case scenario going forward in what's happening in Ladakh, or maybe across the LAC. Do you think we are in for a long haul, or do you think all these discussions, diplomatic talks that are going on would resolve the issue in a manner that is mutually convenient and satisfactory?
Look, I've also been student of China for a very long time, and I do not reckon that MOFA has a standing that the CMC has got. The CMC runs the country, and the president among the three major heads he wears is also chairman of CMC and general secretary and the president of the country. So CMC is the one who makes decisions. and it gets implemented. And the PLA also has its own arm for foreign policy, so they are issue to reckon with by themselves. The CCP has its own arm for foreign policy, ILD or something like that. So it is PLA who runs the issue. Now, to come to the question you're asking, I think we have developed a trust deficit. We have to be cautious. Nobody, if a similar thing happens after 6 months in some other area, nobody will pardon the army hierarchy to say that it would happen 6 months ago. Why were you not prepared in the other areas which same thing would have happened? So the anxiety in the minds of people who are practitioners, who are the serving established, will be so they will be business as usual. Even if the diplomacy at the military level, which is on between the corps commanders and the GOCs and the brigade commanders, continues, the caution imposed by what has happened in Pegongso especially and in Galwan will be tremendous to us. So this is the new normal for us in Eastern Ladakh. So people have to be watchful of this end. Second is the issue of having reserves. Now, at a drop of a hat, we just cannot start moving people from downwards. Ladakh is closed for 6 months a year. 21st century, 6 months a year, we are not even able to access it. And the aircraft that fly in have a restriction of load that they can drop and carry from Leh. So what happens, and you have also to sustain the forces. So we'll have to rethink the force levels, that in case something happens in a short notice, how will we handle it? You remember 2013, it happened in the month of April. It had pacified down, it happened. So, these months are difficult for us, and we have to manage the issues in a manner that we have adequacy of reserves and we are able to train them, and we have the capability of undertaking, holding on to sometimes. And last point I would say is that what Mr. Ranade rightly pointed out, and I heard him earlier once saying about power sector also being threatened, etc. The fact is that there are new realms of warfare which may or may not descend down to fisticuffs or even offensive on the border. If he wants to achieve a political aim of putting the nation down in many manners, cyber, as he rightly pointed out, Mr. Ranade, electronic warfare, or for that means space. He's got those satellites which can trouble us. He's also got rocket forces. He can, do non-contact. Various realms of warfare are changing as time to come. We have to prepare for the entire spectrum. It is not alone that we have to fight in Galwan or Demchok or Pegongso or Chumal. We have also to fight in realms which we can't imagine at this moment, and whatever sleepers he's got into our systems, which he can, damage us at a drop of a hat. Our imagination, it's an imaginative warfare. Imaginations have to go far beyond what we are doing now.
That's right. Mr. Ranade, last word to you. Your prognosis, worst and the best case scenario, not just the current crisis, but I think the whole paradigm of relations between India and China will change post this episode, is something that we have to look at.
Quite right. In fact, as was said, we have to prepare for full spectrum warfare. Chinese have the capabilities. We've all been monitoring it, and we have to get ready for that. Having said that, let me make two quick points. Firstly, personally, I have, in fact, even told Chinese interlocutors when I met them that the problem between India and China is that there is an absence of trust. It's not a trust deficit, there is an absence of trust. And I think the recent incidents have made that very clear, even to people who still gave them, who were charitable and said, well, there is a modicum of trust. I think now, as General Sharma said also, in the armed forces also, there's not going to be that thing. They're going to be suspicious and then proceed accordingly. Secondly, as far as whether they're going to, it's going to be long drawn out or not, I think, I hope that the talks do succeed at all levels and that the Chinese agree to withdraw. But there are two things here which I will stress. One is that our government has to ensure that they go back to where they were before April. Because in today's age, you cannot hide information. The satellites are available to everyone. And I think there is so much attention that has been focused on this that everyone is going to be watching it. The second is the problem in China itself. The Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party have been under a lot of pressure, domestic pressure. The COVID outbreak, the way they mishandled it, has put them under even more pressure. And after Doklam, I do remember, and at the risk of being repetitive, let me just say that after Doklam, there was a lot of sort of criticism of the disengagement that was agreed to. It was for various reasons. My own reasoning that the party congress was coming, and Xi Jinping did not want Doklam hanging on his head at that point in time. It has nothing to do with BRICS, etc., in my view. So it was, and they are under a lot of pressure. At that time, there was also a rumor that went around in China saying that Xi Jinping bought off India and got India to agree to a disengagement by paying 20 billion yuan for various projects. That had to be denied. It was denied by the party, by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and by the Defense Ministry, separately and officially. So, that was a lot of things. And as I said, there is a feeling in China that so much has been spent on the PLA, so much has been done for the PLA. How can it back off from a country like India, which, according to them, is something that they could take care of, just like this. So it is not going to happen. I think Xi Jinping, at the very least, even if he wants to, he will have to look for some way of leaving without loss of face. And we must be very clear in our mind that he's the one who engineered the whole thing. So let him figure out a way of pulling back. But this is the dilemma he will be in. I hope it gets resolved. Otherwise, I anticipate that something more might happen, some other skirmish, or he might decide to try and go for something bigger and cut us off somewhere, or I don't know what options he would have.
Well, let's hope for the best, but prepare for the worst is all that one can actually conclude after all the discussions that we've had. Thank you very much, both of you, for being such lucid and insightful commentators on what's happening both at the LAC and, of course, the Chinese military. I think our viewers would benefit from what you have said. And as usual, lovely talking to both of you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Nitin.
Thank you.
Thank you.